I remember that I was required to deliver good business results for a certain division, and the environment at that time was against us. It was a business meeting where I was feeling a bit down because the results wasn't coming through. At that time, there's something that my then boss said that got me into so much of a comfort and gave me so much admiration for him.
Welcome to Agile Leaders Conversations. This is a podcast where we invite human-centered professionals and leaders to share what it means to lead in today's workplaces. From their personal stories, find out their greatest learning that guides them through disruption and forge a better way forward. Their insights will maximize your leadership potential and unlock possibilities for a better future. My name is Chuen Chuen. I'm the author of Leaders People Love, a guide for agile leaders to creating great workplaces and happy employees. I'm delighted to have you listening today. My guest is Frank Khoo, Head of Asia for Talent and Learning Solutions at LinkedIn. Frank leads a team of professionals who help organizations and executives achieve positive transformation. Welcome to the show, Frank. To start off, tell us what you do and why you do what you do.
Thank you for inviting me, Chuen Chuen. I'm currently the head of Asia for LinkedIn Talent and Learning Solutions. I joined LinkedIn about 7.5 years ago. And what inspired me about LinkedIn when I first joined is really its vision of creating economic opportunity for the global workforce. This is what I've always been wanting to do, which is to help people to progress in their life and have access to better opportunities. And so far, it has been a wonderful journey for me over the last 7.5 years. I learned a lot about compassionate management, which LinkedIn is known for. I learned a lot about how we can leverage culture and values to really get people to bring their whole self to work. And I learned also a lot about how to enable and empower people of different generations, from boomers to Gen X to the Gen Z, to be able to work together so that we can create something that is great for both the business as well as the community.
That's why you are the perfect guest for this podcast. So this podcast is developed in conjunction with my book, Leaders People Love. And so many things that you have said now, creating economic opportunities by developing people. How do we take a more human-centered approach to management, encourage people to bring the whole self to work, and the most crucial of all, empowering people from different generations to come together so that they can work together in happier workplaces and be more fulfilled human beings at the end of life.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm still learning the tricks of the game, but for both of us, it's really learning that keeps us going, become better people.
I have been reading all your posts. You have demonstrated yourself very strongly as an ally for veteran leaders, up-and-coming leaders. So while we talk about this topic of leadership, specifically leaders people will love to work with and work for, who's the first person that comes to your mind?
That would be my personal hero, and it's none other than Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. And he has been my hero, and he will continue to be my hero, somebody I really looked up to. First of all, it's because the environment, the political as well as societal environment that he has created for Singapore has given me the opportunities to become who I am today, and also given opportunities for Singapore to move from an impoverished third world nation to become a thriving metropolis. And I think if I look at Lee Kuan Yew's leadership, there are three things that really stands out for me. The first one is clarity of vision. When Singapore first achieved independence, we were nothing to brag about. It was an impoverished country with no natural resources and potentially facing a lot of risk from different angles. He had the vision to make Singapore a first world country since more than 50 years ago. So to me, the clarity of vision is enormous, and that is the first driver for Singapore to be able to achieve what we have today. The second one is what I call the courage of conviction. Not only did he establish the vision, but he has shown all of us that we can do it. He himself went through thick and thin to be able to make a lot of difference in Singapore. One good example is the cleaning up of the Singapore River. I think both of us have seen the olden days of Singapore River where there are rubbish floating on the water itself. It took more than 20 years to clean it up. And it won't happen without the courage of conviction. The third leadership quality I saw in Mr. Lee Kuan Yew is his ability to communicate and rally all people in Singapore to achieve a common goal, which is good for the whole society. And these are the three qualities that I've seen, which is really relevant. And I'm trying to live such qualities every day.
Lessons from Mr. Lee Kuan Yew: clarity of vision. Not only is he clear, he also dreams big. I can imagine back in the days, in the 1950s, 60s, they will look at Singapore as like, what? This is like a swampland. How can this become a thriving metropolis? You must be crazy, right? But he will
Absolutely.
not be dissuaded. So that's one. The courage, conviction. 20 years to clean out Singapore River. Such a long journey to get there. Ability to communicate. When his reels appear on TikTok, Instagram, I will still watch, and how masterful he is in using simple words to inspire people as if the dream is right in front of them. Very big shoes to fill, and aspirational figure for many of us as well. He's indeed father of Singapore.
Indeed. And a hero to many as well.
Yes.
Definitely myself.
So while we talk about Mr. Lee, this year, 2023, is 100 years since he was born. There's also quite a bit of debate about leadership styles. He's known for being very direct. He doesn't mince his words, and it worked. What do you see as the difference in good leadership now and then? How do the styles change over time?
That's a fantastic question, Chuen Chuen. In fact, good leadership practices have changed or need to change tremendously. Taking the example of Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, we also realize that over time, he has mellowed down on his approach. And in fact, at the right time, he actually stepped aside so that the younger generation of leaders can take on the role of leading Singapore. But in the corporate world, I've seen a big shift that's needed in order to ensure that the younger generations of the workforce, especially when the world has moved from the industrial age right now to the knowledge age, we need new leaders, new types of thinking. The new types of thinking is required to enable and empower all the generations of the workforce to do well in the knowledge economy. So I had this joke with my colleagues that when I first became a leader or people manager, and that was many years ago, when I said, guys, let's do this. And the first response is, when? Fast forward to now, when I said, hey, team members, let's do this. And the first response is, why? So times have changed. And as people managers, as leaders, we need to help people understand the why of doing something so that it can be sustainable, that they can do it with all their heart. When we help people align what they do with why they're doing it, then we can definitely get a better outcome and improve productivity overall.
You understand the multi-generational workforce. How can leaders unpack the why to bring about the change?
I believe that everyone would have their why of doing the same thing, right? So perhaps for the sake of just generalization, maybe people who are in the Gen X, for them, the broader purpose of work, their why, maybe to serve their retirement needs or to ensure that they have time to take care of both the children as well as the parents. And then on the other hand, Gen Zs, to them, the why may be simply in 3-5 years' time, or owning a car, or maybe with bigger aspirations, if they can help protect the environment, enable a more inclusive society, then this is their why. But I personally believe that no matter what, you can always align the corporate objectives with a why of individuals. And it's really the responsibility of a leader to really help explore and help people understand the why, so that when they try to fulfill the corporate objective, they're doing it in a sustainable way. So I always encourage my managers to take a pause when they receive the KPIs. Instead of just going headlong into fulfilling the business objective they're given, I would ask them to take a pause and say, just think about why do you want to achieve it? What does it mean for you? And once they've done that, I realize that people are more focused in achieving it because not only are they fulfilling the company's goal, they're also fulfilling their personal goal. And then when they take action on a daily basis, it becomes more meaningful for them, and the action and the results can be more sustainable.
That's how we can unpack the why such that work becomes meaningful to everyone on your team, no matter which generation they come from. And from the way you were able to articulate what is important to people at different stage, it also means that you understand each of the generations very well. I really like when you say take a pause when they receive their KPIs instead of launching into the doing mode. We are human beings, not human doings. By effectively asking them to pause what you have done is to ask them to be being instead of the doing. It makes them more resilient.
Indeed. Let's say everyone can connect their work on a daily basis with their life aspirations or purpose, then they can become more resilient because they can then overcome the ups and downs of daily situations just because they're focusing on the long-term goal. From what you shared also, the question is then how do we enable people to really understand the why? And once the connection is there, then potentially productivity of individuals will increase. At the same time, happiness at work will increase. And if that happens, then work-life balance will become easy to achieve.
I don't know whether you have done the Leaders People Love Global Survey.
Yes, I've done. Whenever you ask me to do something, I will do it.
I know I can always count on you. So meaningful work is a result of effective and relevant managerial practices, which will then increase happiness in employees and for the businesses being more productive. Now, what about employees that haven't figured out their why?
In my view, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think if you use the right approach, the right questioning techniques, and being a good listener, people will always be able to find what their aspirations are for them to leverage what they want to learn to what they will be doing every day, and we can help them find a connection, right? So seemingly it looks a bit different from what they're doing at work, but if you ask in a very compassionate way, they may find certain connection. Once they do, they will find that engaging in existing work can be more meaningful than what they used to think.
Share more about asking in a compassionate way. How does that sound like?
It's actually very much of a coaching 101. I know that the leaders, we tend to give solutions, but as a good coach, even if we think we have the solutions, we try to hold it back because the solutions may not work for the individual we are working with. And also we hold judgments. Instead of criticizing that person and say, hey, you should have a 10-year plan, not 6-month plan. Let's try to withhold judgment, and then perhaps along the way, they can explore the talents and the passion, and they can do something much better.
So it's about the person, not about the work.
Absolutely. I believe it's never about the work. The work is the outcome, and the people are the ones that will contribute to the outcome. So it's really about the people.
Withhold judgment, without expectation that your way is the only way. This is one of the chapters in the book. Your way is not the only way.
I love it. I'm really looking forward to seeing your book because after responding to your survey, I find that there are so many gems that I can use.
Very happy to hear that. So in your area of responsibility and after years of leadership, what have you learned about leadership that you try to pass on?
One thing I learned is in your first book about being an agile leader, especially in the current environment where there are strong headwinds in our business, the ability for every leader to have a strong sense of the environment and be able to respond accordingly is very critical towards the success of the organization. A good sense of the environment includes how the economy is doing, how is it impacting the business, and also how the people are doing. At the same time, what sort of strategy, what sort of engagement, what sort of conversation we can have to ensure that we rally our people together to deliver the best job they can ever do in the existing environment. A couple of things on this connection. First of all, a sense of common mission, right? When times are tough, you need people to rally together. And secondly, as I've shared before, if they know how what they're doing right now is connected to what they love to do in the longer term, the life purpose, then they will be able to put in the best effort. Now, at the same time, it's also important for leaders to be authentic and a bit more vulnerable, because in this fast-changing environment, we know that we don't have all the answers. It's good to let people know that for some of you, you may not agree on this objective that we set ourselves on, but as a team, we want to make sure that everybody is successful. So let's go ahead, nevertheless, and we learn along the way. And to me, this is what agile leadership is in this very complex environment.
So understanding the entire ecosystem. These days, I don't just use systems thinking because it can sound very transactional or it sounds fixed. So if you think of it, it's a living system. What one person does will impact another part of the ecosystem. Being aware that we don't have the answers, but we will communicate, bring people on board. About leaders expected to lead, but we don't have all the answers. How did you grow to become comfortable with it? Was that natural or something that you developed along the way?
It's definitely something I developed along the way, because when I first became a people leader, a great leader is someone who has all the answers for the next 10 years and have very specific plans on how to get there. Now, it's very difficult to have all the answers for the next 1 year. So therefore, it's good to be real and let people know what the real situation is. And so that people can actually look upon you as being able to lead them with flexibility, with agility, and they're more willing to follow you. At the same time, it's not just about following you, it's about doing things together with a certain direction so that we can progress towards a true north of what we want to achieve.
This is where maybe a lot of listeners will want to hear more. How do I even be more comfortable? Because the leadership archetypes that we have seen, a leader is great if he has the answer that is right for 10 years or more. And the approach to get there is fixed, cannot change. To shed this archetype and this measurement of success is very difficult. That's why a lot of leaders I work with, they are so stressed out because they are holding themselves to impossible standards. So mindset shift wise, how do you reframe for yourself such that you can deal with the chances of getting the approach wrong, which is very high, and look at working towards the ideal state as a sign of being flexible and adaptable instead of incompetence?
I would say two key ones. One is leveraging what Marshall Goldsmith talked about. What gets you here won't get you there. I know a lot of leaders who have been successful in the past, adopting a certain style of leadership, will find it very difficult to change. Because the idea is that if I've been successful in the past 30 years with this style of leadership, it should be successful in the next 5 years. Right? So it's very difficult for them to change. So the idea of what gets you here won't get you further, I think that's something for leaders to think about. And if you can do that, then you slowly develop this growth mindset that if you're open to rethinking about your previous hypothesis and learn new things, take inputs from the environment and through your personal learning, you're able to then devise maybe a better strategy moving forward. The next part is, instead of being a know-it-all, just change and be a learn-it-all. A lot of people think that I'm a know-it-all, or some people say, I eat salt more than you eat rice, in the Chinese saying, 我吃盐多过你吃饭. Move beyond a know-it-all to learn it all so that you can be more flexible. I think one key area to consider about being a learn-it-all is you must remove your pride and ego, right? A lot of people, they continue in the same mode of operation because of pride. They're not willing to change. They're not willing to learn from people who are more junior than them, people 4 or 5 levels below them, or people 30 or 40 years below them. So if you can remove pride, I think that is a good start towards a more progressive kind of leadership.
So a lot of our sayings, I think idioms might need to change.
Definitely the eating salt part.
Yeah, for sure. I really love the transition between know it all to learn it all. Okay, I'm a Singaporean, so Singlish is an essential part of who I am. So when I explain to clients, I always like to say it's the che mindset and the wow mindset. Okay, so let me explain. If you're a know it all, You are no longer open to learning. When somebody gives you a new idea or new way of doing things, you will go, che. So in Singapore, when we say che, it means what's there to celebrate about. So it's a che mindset. Instead, we need to retain the joy of learning, the joy of discovery, so that if somebody shows us a new way of doing things, we'll go, wow, I didn't know that. And that's how we can be very flexible, adaptable, and agile.
Absolutely. You're spot on, Chuen Chuen. Really, it's about the sense of curiosity, also humility as well, that you can always learn from people, all sorts of people. So that's where wow can happen. If you stay open, you're more sensitive to the environment. And even if not somebody, some occurrences in the environment can also help you to learn something as well.
So our ears must always stay open. That's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. What's the most
Yes.
important leadership lesson you've learned?
One important leadership lesson I learned is during a time where the company I was working for wasn't doing very well. I remember that I was required to deliver good business results for a certain division, and the environment at that time was against us. It was a business meeting where I was feeling a bit down because the results wasn't coming through. At that time, there's something that my then boss said that got me into so much of a comfort and gave me so much admiration for him. He told me after I shared the bad results, you know, Frank, the only thing that you can do and all of us can do in life is to do our best. When that statement was articulated, I felt so much of a belief, comfort no doubt, but belief that I want to do better for the division as well as for my manager. So I've always used this subsequently, and it's very practical during these strong macro environments where sometimes, despite trying your best, the results may not come in. And when that happens, as the leader, what do you do with the people on your team? Do you tear them down, or do you try to build them up such that they can do better in future? At that time, that was a turning point, and that was so revolutionary for me.
Did the business achieve results in the end?
Oh yeah, it turned around after 1.5 years. So that was a positive change.
Yeah. So this is a deep question, right, for all leaders, everyone listening in. When things are going south, when things don't look good, do you tear people down or do you build them up? At the end of the day, what's more important? Because it is human lives that managers and leaders touch every single day. The weight of our words multiply accordingly. I'm wondering if you are willing to comment on this. Leadership is very lonely journey, especially the more senior we get, and your every single move, whatever you say or you don't say, is being scrutinized, hyper analyzed. How do you deal with that pressure?
Yeah, I used to think that leadership is a very lonely journey. But actually, I've changed my mind. Obviously, as a leader, there are certain things that you definitely need to keep confidential. There's certain information that you are aware that has big impacts to the organization that you cannot reveal to many people. Now, and that's, I think, the reason why leaders can be lonely. But on the other hand, there are other areas which you can actually be very authentic and share, right? Sometimes another area why leaders think that they will be lonely is because they cannot be their true self, right? But actually, despite some of the things that we have to keep very confidential, we can still be our true self. For instance, at LinkedIn, we have quite a number of people who are in Gen Y, and they really appreciate someone who actually can be a true self and really relates to them, listen to them, and really be part and parcel of even their celebration. Sometimes I'll join the teams to celebrate, to have fun together. And sometimes I invite some of my colleagues to my place. Of course, there's certain boundaries, right? That first of all, like don't take too much alcohol, right? But beyond that, you can be your authentic self. People expect you to let your hair down, to be able to have fun together, to be able to share some of the interesting things in your life. And when this happens, people feel like you're a leader that knows them better. At the same time, you don't feel that leadership is a lonely journey because you do have some people that actually you can work, you enjoy the company with.
So being authentic doesn't mean you are the same all the time. That is the most important lesson. And your definition of being authentic is being flexible. Doesn't mean it's all in or all out. It's like you don't have to go all in and hang all your guts out.
Yeah, that's right. Some people call this selective vulnerability, right? As the team members, they love to see people who are real. And to be real, sometimes you need to be a bit vulnerable. But as a leader, you can be vulnerable, but you can be selectively vulnerable. And it doesn't have to be fake. It can be very real. What are the boundaries? There are certain things that you have to really keep very confidential. There are certain areas that you can share. And once you know the difference, you can be vulnerable to a point whereby you can become very real.
That's good. I'm teaching this leading with vulnerability in leadership storytelling. So this was the exact topic. And we discussed how can you share, for example, stories of failure without eroding your credibility. In fact, you want to share stories of failure to enhance your credibility, competence, and character. And you have to know then what are the right stories to pick. We know Gen Zs are changing the workforce. Very soon, Gen Zs, millennials will be the majority of the workforce. What's your advice for leaders leading multi-generational teams?
For the Gen Zs, they want people who can listen to them because they want to have a voice. Many of them have a great purpose, for instance, for environment, for inclusion, for diversity. And they want to represent the voice in the workplace or have the voice represented in the workplace. So to engage Gen Z is important to take some time to listen to them. Of course, in a multi-generational workforce environment, it's important for people of different ages to know one another. And there are several ways to do this. So for instance, in LinkedIn, we have an employee resource group called Wisdom. It's meant to address the needs of people in our company above 40 years old. And then we realized that members who have signed up for the Wisdom Employee Resource Group comes from all ages, above 40 as well as below 40. And initially, when I saw this, I was quite surprised. And then I realized that actually people have a need. The younger generation have a need to understand the older generation. The older generation, of course, has a need to understand what the younger generation is. Therefore, back to the question of don't be a know-it-all, but a learn-it-all. Have the humility to learn from people across the generations. And I think companies can actually go a long way in organizing such interaction so that people know from one another.
It's a whole company systemic change to create such platforms so that there's cross-pollination of the ideas, wanting to learn from one another.
Absolutely. And it's also important for especially the senior leaders who in general from the Gen X or the older Gen Y to also have an open mind, to be able to not just listen, but also learn from the remaining of the Gen Y and the Gen Zs.
What's one simple action a leader can do every day to make a difference in the long run?
Manage their own energy level. If you're able to manage their own energy, they can then help the team level up on the energy level. I'm not sure whether you have seen leaders coming to work feeling depressed, being dejected. Now, it's not a good day for not just the leader, but also for the rest of team members. Right? So to me, it's important for us as leaders to manage our own energy level. Once we're able to do that, we can actually help the team manage their energy level so that the whole team can become very enthusiastic in what they're doing and come together to achieve a greater goal.
I'm curious because before we started recording for the session, I was talking about energy as well and the high performance routine. What are some steps in your high performance routine to manage your energy?
Okay, for me, I do recognize that there are 4 levers of energy that I can control to build my overall energy level up. So the first one is physical energy, and it's got to do with exercise, nutrition, and enough sleep. The second one is mental energy. It's got to do with the learning as well as acquisition of knowledge and skills. The third one is emotional energy, which is got to do with the relationship, the social elements, the community elements. And then the fourth one is spiritual energy. And for people with faith, it's really about believing in the existence of God. It can also be having a broader purpose, a life purpose, and also a passion in doing certain things. So with this understanding, I always try to level up on different energy pillars. So for instance, I feel like my emotional energy is down. I'm feeling a bit anxious. What I'll do is sometimes I just go to the gym to work out. And the physical energy actually can help elevate the other parts of energy as well. Sometimes I'll spend some quiet time doing some learning, and that can help up-level my energy. And of course, having a higher purpose, whether it's believing in God or believing in something that can contribute to society in a bigger way, can also help elevate other parts of the energy. And this will then support us in being able to do our work or fulfill our responsibility in a much better way and have positive impact to the broader environment.
Yes, and that's perfectly how to be a leader in an ecosystem. Thank you so much, Frank, for your time and the gems that you have shared. It's been a pleasure to have you on this show.
Thank you, Chuen Chuen, for having me. It's always a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope we can catch up a lot more often.